Hello, everyone. This is Bob Lowe, CSIA Executive Director. Thank you for attending the June CSIA webinar. An important point of interest, ask questions during the webinar by using the Q&A panel. There is a chat panel, but please, we ask that you use that to communicate with the host for technical difficulties only. Today's webinar is actually a panel discussion in conjunction with being a presentation. The focus for today is Latin America. If there is a positive response in the surveys for today, we may do future webinars on other countries and regions. However, many of the principles of doing business outside of your borders are universal. Holysys, a partner member, is attending today's webinar in preparation for a potential webinar on Asia, and other partner members will be on that panel as well. Please understand that when we speak of the U.S. today, it can actually be any developed nation, such as Canada or European countries. We use U.S. just for simplicity. The host and sponsor of our monthly webinars is Software Toolbox, a CSIA partner member. Software Toolbox helps SIs lower their risk on projects that involve software by providing them a unique mix of off-the-shelf software products and a rapid response technical support that minimizes the need for custom code and lowers field startup time risk. Again, that's Software Toolbox. I would like to briefly introduce today's panelists. Vicente Perez is president of Automation Lasso, a high-technology distributor in the U.S. and Mexico. Don Roberts, principal at Exotech, is a control system integration industry consultant and is a CSIA certification auditor and is on the Latin America Advisory Committee. PC Romano is president of Avid Solutions in North Carolina, a CSIA certified integrator, and he's on the CSIA Board of Directors as the Vice Chairman and is on the Latin America Advisory Committee also. So those are our panelists. I will be participating as well. So without further delay, here's Vicente Perez to begin the discussion.
Hi, Bob, and hi, everyone. Thanks, Bob. As Bob was mentioning, we're going to make a conversation out of this. This is going to be, we're trying to make this as dynamic and interactive as possible. And I guess, Bob, this is a continuing conversation that we have for a long time.
Yeah.
This is our agenda. We're going to be talking about these topics during the next hour. I'm going to leave you a minute so you can read it. We're going to move fast because usually this conversation takes longer than we all intended. The main idea in this conversation is, in my case, we are a distributor in Mexico. We distribute automation products. What we see is a tremendous amount of opportunities with large end users and several good system integrators in the field. And most of the times, when a large project come up, there require expertise and financial capital size. And the opportunity that I see is, I've been with the CSIA for a long time today, and I see a tremendous group of automation system integrators with outstanding expertise. And what I see in Latin America is the need for that expertise and a good set of local system integrators. So Bob has been in Latin America, and PC Romano, the other panelist, is with us as well. The three of us are going to be talking about opportunities that we see on this market. We're going to start with some facts. We're going to start talking about what typically in our conversations during the CSIA event or other shows, the conversations that we have with system integrators and how they perceive. And also we how the conversations go when we talk about opportunities in Latin America with U.S. system integrators. And as Bob says, we say U.S., but we're talking European, Australian system integrators as well. One of the first topics is the currency, how to quote or how to do business in such a set of different currencies in Latin America. And the news is that almost every country in Latin America will accept U.S. dollars. Almost every system integrator in Mexico, Brazil, or Colombia, they will quote in dollars. The other comment is how can I handle a purchase order or a business side when I'm in U.S. So most of the companies can usually they do business already with U.S. companies, and they can send orders directly to U.S. and dealing directly with U.S. as U.S. company. And the third, okay. One of the ideas that we're going to address a little bit later during this conversation is partnering. And probably, Bob, here, you've been on these conversations as well. And we see the Latin American system integrators on these events. It could be a show, it could be a CSIA event, and we see how this networking works. Bob, why don't you address this topic? And from your U.S. standpoint, you used to be a system integrator. How do you see this networking? I've been doing this for 20 years, and every time I see a good teamwork between a Mexican system integrator and an American system integrator, good things come out. But what is your perception? Well,
my perception is that it can definitely work well, and I've traveled extensively with Eduardo Acosta, who is president of Omnicon, and there have been many situations where his ability to partner with integrators in the U.S., Europe, and Australia has led him to project opportunities because an example I remember clearly is validation in the life sciences industry. It was something that he was not particularly good at and was not prepared to do it, but it was an essential component of a project. So he partnered with the U.S. integrator, and that led to him being able to bring in a very substantial order. And that's one simple example, and there are many relationships that have been built between U.S. and Mexican integrators. I've encountered that. So I'm just going to give one example, but just simply say that it definitely works. It definitely works.
Yeah, if I might, this is PC Romano. There's a current example that's going on. A friend of mine who runs a CSIA certified company here in the U.S. called me a few weeks ago and said, I've got a project in Brazil with one of my major clients, and I've got all the software developed. I want to re-implement that down there. And so he was looking for a local partner that could provide the equipment, panel fabrication, and startup services. And so I'm helping him team up with a local integrator to do just that. So I think that's a great opportunity.
Probably these three first bullet points are the important topic that we discuss over these networking conversations. I will address those a couple of more examples later.
Hey, Vicente, it's Don. Just as a matter of clarity on the slides, LA, usually Latin America.
Oh.
Local is local in the country.
Thank you, Bob. Forgot to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah. If I could comment too, in introducing Don, I mentioned that he's a consultant in the control system integration industry. Don has spent substantial time consulting overseas as well, so he has very substantial knowledge throughout the world, anywhere from Latin America to Russia and everywhere in between. So he has substantial contributions he can make to this discussion as well.
Well, language barrier. Most of the large end users or system integrators will have people that speak English. However, still some challenge there. And Bob, let me bring you back again. You don't speak Spanish, but you've been in most of the, I don't know if most, but in a lot of Latin American countries, Spanish and Portuguese. What can you tell us there? I mean,
well, for me personally, language is a barrier only because you're right, I don't speak Spanish and I don't speak Portuguese. However, it's not a deal stopper by any means. I would not let language get in the way of doing business outside of your borders, whether you're in Latin America looking north or you're in U.S., Europe, or wherever looking south. There are top managers in Latin America who do not speak English, but they have other people within their company who do. And, for example, when I travel, Eduardo Acosta, on our board of directors and head of our global committee, he travels with me because he speaks both languages. Well, all three, I should say, English, Spanish, and he manages with Portuguese. So the barriers can be broken down. My point is, don't let language cause you to be reluctant to do business outside of your home country.
Before continuing,
if I can jump in and add to that, my experience is that the locals usually have somebody that can speak very good English, and that person is going to be part of the team. The other thing that I've seen that's successful is U.S. integrators that actually have somebody on their staff in their office that understands the language and the culture, and they act as a liaison, and that's been very, very effective for a lot of integrators.
Now, before continuing this point, I remind you that you can go to raise your hand, and if you want to make a comment or address a question, please let us know. We're trying to do this presentation as dynamic as possible. Before leaving this bullet point on language barrier, there are also the principles that Bob mentioned at the beginning. Most of the automation companies, we in Mexico, and I say we, even though I live in Seattle, my main business is still in Mexico. When we receive a system integrator from U.S. or when we receive a supplier from U.S., we know what to expect. We know that those principles. We know how they're going to address. But also there's certain differences in having a local partner. In this case, in Mexico or Brazil or Colombia, when you have your local partner, it can help you to address those small differences. Usually works very well. And continuing this presentation, we want to address those differences. One of the topics is when I send people to Latin America, what should I do? And here is one of the differences that we're talking. Almost every country has different rules how to send people. However, when you know the right partner, and when you get to know a system integrator locally, they will tell you how to do that. Usually it's easy. Usually it's almost a very, very quick steps that you need to take before sending someone, but a local person will address you how. And the most important is, as Bob says, when you are down there, if you are with somebody local, that will be faster, it's going to be easier, and most of the time it's going to be a lot cheaper as well.
Vicente, if I could inject here also, please realize that some countries require a visa, and my first overseas trip where I required that was actually India when I was there about 2 years ago. However, what I found is it's very simple to get a visa because there are companies who are in the business of helping you get your visa, and for not more than about $250, you can go through the process of getting a visa for India, for Brazil, which is required there as well. Passports are necessary in all cases because you need to first get in that other country, and obviously you or your people need to get back into the U.S. Passports take a little time to get, so be sure that you allow enough time for that. But going back to the visa issue, get help from companies that are in the business. If anyone listening is ever wondering who could I contact, please send me an email, give me a call. I can tell you who it is. It's easy. It's not expensive. and those visas are typically good for 10 years. So don't let those be, visas and passports be a barrier. They are really not. And also there are companies who help you with immunization issues. I work with a company called Passport Health. They know all the rules in all the countries, what immunizations you need, like, for example, yellow fever. Depending on where you're coming from and going to, you can't get into a country without proof that you've been vaccinated, but there are companies that can help you through that process as well. So don't feel like it's an excess burden to get through visa, passport, and immunization issues. It's very simple.
There are also letters going back and forth between the consulates and the local company in order to get you certain permits. Sometimes, most of the times, you need, of course, you need a visa. In Mexico, some companies ask you for a paper that says that you're coming to work, but most of the times that won't be, the work permit won't be necessary. It's right. Just a simple visa that the local system integrator will help you to address.
Yeah, if I can jump in there a little bit too. Some countries, if you're going to have people over there for an extended period of time, then you also need to think about things like HIV testing and things of that nature. So something to keep in the back of your mind is any additional insurance or things of that nature, or cultural differences, training on cultural differences.
One of the opportunities that we see as a Mexican distributor or Latin American distributor, as we see, is there are many large Latin American end users, and we go from the automotive industry, pharmaceutical, etc. One of the perceptions is that hand labor, those factories are there with not a very broad automation systems, and that's not the case anymore. Most of those large end users, they will have large systems, let's say, for those that are familiar with the automotive industry. In an assembly line in the US or Europe, you will find between 190 to a little bit over 200 welding robots. It just is exactly the same case in Mexico. For the IV system and the tracking system on the pharmaceutical companies, in Latin America is exactly the same way, just like you do it in the States. They need to comply the same rules and the same procedures, doesn't matter where they are. The local system integrators will have an outstanding technical expertise. But what I see, my experience looking at the CSI, some of the CSIA partners, is that you've been doing this for 30 years, 40 years. And that experience dramatically will help local system integrators and local end users. Another comment here is, most of the times, this is my experience, when we go and we tell them, for example, what is an andon system, they kind of have the idea what an andon system is. It's very specific systems for the automotive industry. But when we tell them that all the information that they can get, all the type of reports that they can get, they don't know this. To us, that was news, that they don't know the details for those systems. We will think that they share information between all their facilities, and it's not the case. So we invite this system integrator with a tremendous experience in certain customer, in certain automotive customer, and they show what they did in U.S., and it was credibility 100%, and the local system integrator was happy because he showed that he has a partner that been doing these systems in U.S., and now they were in Mexico. Everybody win by doing that. So every time we see a system integrator, one of my first questions is, who are your customers? And when they tell me 3M or Procter & Gamble or all those large end users, I say, well, we have a lot of those companies in Latin America. Why don't you try to replicate it or do the systems that you're already doing in U.S.? You can do it in Latin America. I'm sure it's going to be an opportunity for you then. And usually it goes very well. So I think CSIA is a tremendous bridge where you can network to address some of these opportunities. PC Romano, I know you have some experience in Brazil. Have you experienced anything like this, PC? I know you've been.
In my particular situation, we decided to focus on Brazil last year, and I guess one comment I would make is the first step was getting down there and just meeting people. I think the challenge is to connect the specific opportunity your company has with a good long-term strategy, and getting down there and meeting the people helps make that connection. But absolutely, as we move forward, we're hoping to close on an acquisition of a system integrator here shortly, and as we build that out, one of our steps is to take a list of our existing clients in the United States and find out which ones have operations in Brazil. And it's an extensive list of ones that do have those operations.
Vicente, this is John. We did have one comment come in via chat. Bob Chappell is pointing out that when he sent engineers to various countries for startup assistance, you do have to pay attention to the maximum times they're allowed to remain, and then they'd have to leave the country for a weekend and get a new visa to come back in. So just passing that along.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, and
no,
in
that's
addition to
correct.
that, you need to make sure that the visa's multi-entry, because some visas aren't.
Yeah, you got to watch out with that with India. I don't know if you saw this, Bob, but I know with mine, when I did mine, you got to watch out, because sometimes in India, if you aren't careful, you won't get a multi-entry. Company you contract to help you get it should take care of that, but it's an important detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and most of those details, if you have a local partner, in our case, we're a distributor. We don't do any engineering. We do tech support, but we can do engineering. We tell them in advance. If you're going to be here longer than this time, you need to do this, this, and that. And then if you're going to do this type of job and you need to bring this type of tools, you need to do this. If you need to temporarily import this type of devices, we'll help you to do that. It's usually something that the local company that you partner with will take care of it. It's a teamwork here. And this not only applies to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
A word that I heard used there was details. It's very important to pay attention to details. Don't brush over anything. Read very carefully all the information regarding visas and so forth, and do pay attention to every detail. Absolutely.
Correct. Finishing this bullet point on the end users, American end users in Latin America, after we saw the level of interest on this end user that I was describing, that we took this system integrator with experience, we turned to our partner. We sell Hollis. It's a major PLC and DCS manufacturer in China. We asked them, we know this American end user, American company, they have a lot of facilities in China as well. So we asked them if they can help this system integrator to show and promote that solution into their companies, and they did help. We're working on that now in China. So even exactly the same thing that we did in Mexico, now our partner Hollis are doing it in China. Next bullet point. One of the frustrations, this is probably very focused on Latin America. System integrators are not the same size that you will find in the U.S. They're smaller. And every time there is a bidding process, and there is a large project meaning probably from about $500,000, they require certain capital, certain size of the company in order to handle, in order to be able to participate in this bidding process. And a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times you will find good system integrators that certainly have the technical capability to do the job, but they don't have the financial background. And they are not willing, they are not able to participate. You will find a lot of those large projects that they go directly to an American system integrator or European system integrator. That's frustrating for the local system integrator because they see that as a big opportunity. They would like to participate. They have the manpower locally, and they don't have a chance to participate. So this is also a very important part of this. PC, again, I don't know if you have experience in this topic as well, PC. You're a large system integration company, and you do business outside the United States. You want to add something here?
Yeah, I'll add 2 points. From our experience, first of all, some clients have a perception that some of the system integrators that have been around longer and come from developed countries may be better qualified to do certain projects, especially large projects. And then the other thing, I think, is capital availability. In the United States, for example, capital is more available to companies like ours. Things like lines of credit are more available and at a lower cost than in a lot of Latin American countries. So combining those 2 things, I think to involve an American system integrator on large projects makes a lot of sense.
Correct. We probably, I think it's the next bullet point. Well, we're going to address the banking helping in Latin America is almost non-existent. We all frustrated for that. You will find that a Latin American system integrator has probably the same technical expertise on the product, PLC programming, drive systems, etc. On experience working with a specific process probably is not as large as you will find it in the States. Also, when I've seen this team working for a long time, and I see the great project management and business capability for a U.S. company, for a U.S. system integrator working locally with the local system integrator, and when they use the local manpower, also you can imagine the cost for a good PLC programmer is a fraction of that will be in the States. So probably the PLC programming is going to be done locally, the panel building is going to be locally, but the project management and the know-how and probably some of the capital, the capital side of this project is going to be done in the States. So it's a perfect match. There is a need for this expertise in Latin America. There's a local technical people in Latin America and some business management and capital and experience and credibility from the U.S. system integrator. Our next bullet.
Vicente, we have a question
Sure.
from one of the participants. The question is bonding typically required of system integrators in Latin America?
Bonding. You tell me a little bit more. What do you mean with that?
Yeah, so in the United States, especially on government work, sometimes they require what's called performance and payment bonding. That's where a third-party company will ensure your performance and payment. So I don't know if there's something similar in Latin America. I haven't seen it in my experience. I don't know if any of the other panelists have.
I haven't seen it either. I know what you're talking about. No, I haven't. PC, you probably, again, you have you're a large system integrator with business in Latin America. What do you think?
Yeah, and I've heard of cases of that. We haven't experienced it where we've required or where the client has required bonding. What we have seen is a very big difference in business insurance. Both in Mexico and in Brazil, in our experience, a lot of times system integrators don't have the same insurance that we have that covers all aspects of their business. Instead, they often take out insurance policies just for a particular project, and usually that's because the client requires it. We have a subcontractor in Mexico who didn't have the insurance we required, and so they did take out a policy just for the project they're working on with us.
Okay. But I would say that it's not that common. This case is not something standard, I will say that, about PC.
Yeah, PC, that's been kind of my experience too, is that I haven't really heard too much in the line of bonding, but what I had seen is terms and conditions that kind of have the integrator carrying the ball for a lot longer, so the protection is usually arrived at there.
Yes, and there are also probably the main problem that we see is when the system integrator doesn't have the business experience, the business side of this handling large projects. There are no regulations, clear regulations in Latin America, and problems come differently. Yeah, every time we've been talking about insurance, or every time we're talking about certain protection for large projects, is in a good level of interest in Latin America, but there is no regulations, and there is no best practices on this particular topic. No best practices written on this. Probably CSIA can help there. Okay. Anybody else with a comment on this topic?
One quick comment. Paul Barnard with the CSIA Insurance program is actually helping us establish a similar insurance policy down in Brazil. So I would certainly keep him in mind.
Yeah, actually, the CSIA insurance program is now fully global. We have carriers that will write policies specifically for control system integration, I think nearly anywhere in the world. So please know that coverage is available through CSIA.
Okay. Our next bullet point is almost 95%, around 95% of system integrators are less than $3 million. Very good companies, technically oriented, on the early stages. Typically, is what you will find in Latin America. That's typically the case. There are some large system integrators. Eduardo Costa is not with us today, but he is in Colombia, is one of the main system integrators I know in South America. Brazil has a tremendous and large system integrators as well. I believe it was PCU that was talking about the banking system and the line of credit. It's almost non-existent. It is existent, but it's really complicated to work with banks. Interest rates are not friendly. Paperwork is just bureaucracy. It really takes, you need to think twice before you go to the bank and ask for help. It's not something that we do as a business in Latin America. And I think this is another huge benefit. Partnering with somebody local, partnering with the U.S. company, the local system integrators will benefit.
Yeah,
anybody with a comment here?
Yeah, I'll add just another comment on that. Regarding lines of credit, our bank would not provide a line of credit for us opening an operation in Brazil dedicated to that operation. However, they do provide lines of credit when we do a project from the United States that is in another country. So you might want to keep that in mind. It's another reason, I think, to partner with local system integrators. If the project is being done out of the United States, out of your office in the United States, you can use those receivables on a line of credit, most likely.
Okay.
We have a question from the audience. The question is, what would be the population of a $3 million system integrator in Latin America? I think
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what would be the population of a $3 million system integrator in Latin America? I think he refers to maybe what does that company look like? How many people would be in it?
$3 million will give you from 18 to 30 people. It's about that size. One of the largest system integrators I know in Mexico is they're probably 50, 60, and they probably will be selling $4, $5 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my experience, first of all, it varies country to country based on billing rates. So, for example, billing rates in Brazil are higher than in a lot of Latin American countries, and so the revenue per person may be higher than others. It still tends to be lower than in the United States. I've also noticed, in my experience, more extensive use of administrative staff, more delegation of project management activities, those kind of things, which might increase your head count but might keep your average salary lower.
Yes. Probably senior technical Senior engineer with 10, 15 years experience of programming PLC will be probably a third of what you will pay in the U.S., 1/3, and electrician, it will be probably 25% of the salary of a similar person in the U.S. About those numbers. This is in Mexico. Yeah. It applies to Mexico, Colombia. It's a little bit higher in Brazil, as PC was saying, but that's pretty much the case. Bob, probably the next slide is something that you will help us to go in detail. The only thing I will add at the beginning is I've seen the networking at the CSIA events. I think they are great. Looking at the Latin American system integrators that they go or they are interested in CSIA, we've been helping Bob also when he goes to Mexico. And we see that there is a level of interest. The concept that a group of system integrators will help each other, you really need to take some time to sink into the Latin American culture. It's not something that we do very well. We don't do teamwork very well. When we do it well, but it takes time to really trust that this is going to work. But my experience is that this system integrator has been very motivated and interested in what the CSIA has to offer.
You know, one of the big differences that I see is that in Latin America, there's a much more contention or almost feeling like, this may be too strong a word, but like your competitor is your enemy, and there's not a tendency for integrators to collaborate like you might find in the U.S. So what CSIA brings, and not just U.S. but other countries as well, so what CSIA brings is that culture of and a willingness to share with one another and learn from one another. So, you know, that's one of the reasons that I encourage CSIA to not become segmented like Latin America CSIA or Asia CSIA, but rather try to keep it as global as possible so that the integrators everywhere around the globe can come together like at a conference, on our website, in the private community, whatever, and truly network. That's one of the items you see on the list here under Latin America SIs, as we want them, the CSIA can bring them that networking opportunity. So that's the forum that we bring. And we encourage application of the best practices. You know, the cost is such a big deal, but every time I'm talking to an integrator, I mean, it's important everywhere, but it seems like it's even more poignant in Latin America countries where it's just what matters is the dollar. And it's hard for them, therefore, to want to go into applying best practices. They see it as maybe as a burden or whatever, but we help them try to understand that it makes them more efficient and increases the probability of a developed nation system integrator wanting to work with them if they in fact have apply CSIA best practices and have a good, well-established company. So you know, there's that, and eventually becoming CSIA certified. That definitely makes a mark as being a well-organized company. So, you know, it's that same the concept of building the best company possible, the networking opportunities, just bringing people together, managing risk. I mean, most integrators don't understand the concept of risk management, whether it's the corporate level or the project management level. And CSIA is bringing all of this to the foreground and acts as the entity or the forum so that integrators everywhere can learn the skills to apply to their business and therefore work with one another globally.
I can tell you that every time I see a system integrator and I tell them, explain what the CSIA does, and their answer is, so you're telling me that they give me best practices, how they do risk management or how they do project management? I can have access to that information, and I explain, yes, I have an idea what they do, but you should get directly contacted CSIA. And this is something that they really value. It's important for them. They want that information, but they have in their head as a fact that nobody's going to share that with me. because this is their secret. It's their business secret. Both says this is my competitor. Is my enemy. That's number one. And the other part of interest is they all looking to partner with somebody from U.S. Some system integrator from U.S. The typical good big U.S. system integrator will have a lot of credibility with their customers. So if you can partner, if they both can partner, they both will win. They both will get more business. So I think CSIA is a great environment to do those two main things. Share best practices and networking to partner.
Right.
Any other comment, Bob, that you want to add on this line?
Nope, no, I don't think so. I think we've covered it.
I think we're doing very well on time. I think we have another 15 minutes, about 15 minutes. So.
Well, let's, if we could try to move through it quickly so we'll allow a little time at the end for more question and answer in case there are any.
Sounds good. Okay. Now, the next section of this presentation is we're going to be talking about these topics, information, some facts. We've been talking about what we think, our experience, and what we're going to do now is we're going to share some of the facts of each country and why Latin America, why this is important. And again, my experience is every time I see American companies, they have their eyes on Europe or probably Japan or Australia for different reasons, perception of language barriers, and or they think that the market is in Latin America is so small. However, those numbers that you're going to see now in Latin America is something to consider when you see that there is not going to be actually a major competitor in Latin America. It's going to be interesting for you to see how well received you will be in this particular market. Let me go.
Vicente, if I could just jump in, we have another question from the audience. The question is, how would we check the credibility of a Latin American integrator?
You know, this is I should add that one of my comments when I was talking about networking. When the beauty here is, you will find a Latin America system integrator that is interested in best practices and in be participant with the CSIA. So just by itself, I can tell you that system integrator will be a serious and will be a good partner to have. Now, probably in your case, PC Romano or Eduardo, we want to have our information so you can address these type of questions. You will be able to talk to different people and different system integrators, and the best part is going to be one, communication, and second is it requires time. To me, what we found is certain system integrators in Latin America will address this as a particular project. Some others will address this type of partnership with a long-term relationship, but that's something that is going to be happening with time. And to me, the best environment to do that is a CSIA.
Yeah, I think just a couple from my experience. Certainly, belonging to CSIA, if a system integrator in Latin America belongs to CSIA or is working towards certification, I think that's a great advantage when you're looking at potential partners. But what I've done primarily is reach out to our partner members, so the automation suppliers who are all active in these areas, and get their recommendations. They know who the good and reliable system integrators are, and it's surprising what level they'll help you. So, for example, one large automation supplier, the country manager went out of his way to spend time with me just as I was gathering information. So I'd reach out to them.
Okay. Anybody else with a comment? I think that was an important.
Yeah, something I'll comment on.
Topic.
Sometimes when we get an application for membership from a company from a system integrator in Latin America, I'll check with, if I know that they particularly work with a particular automation vendor, I'll contact that vendor and maybe ask them for some feedback, because we certainly want companies that have a little substance to them. That's part of our criteria for being a CSIA member. So yeah, by all means, the automation vendors are a good source.
Without this sounding too much like a plug, one of the things that we've been doing is doing sort of pre-audits via Skype. So that may be something you might want to consider too. It's relatively inexpensive. There's no travel or anything like that involved, but we could pretty quickly go through a pre-audit with the company. That does two things. It helps them get aligned with CSIA, and it gives you a sense of where they're at.
Okay. Moving forward, somebody else was, Bob, it was you?
I just noticed we got another question. What sort of commercial arrangements are normal to ensure payments cross borders? Like a line of credit.
Yeah.
Okay.
From my experience, and I think the LOC the person's referring to here is a letter of credit, which is a technique used by a bank here in the United States, and kind of an escrow. I think that's a best practice, a letter of credit. I just have not seen it used a lot. There's some costs and complexities associated with it, and oftentimes clients or other partners aren't interested in that.
Okay. Probably inside going to the same topic is there are different ways to approach a project. I mean, when a U.S. system integrator partners with the local system integrator, they will go see a project, and between the two system integrators will arrange the way that they can handle this financially. In some cases, it will be better if the company in Peru send the order directly to the U.S. system integrator based in North Carolina, and the local system integrator in Peru will do the engineering, and project management will come from North Carolina, and expertise and tools and etc. Sometimes it will be better if the system integrator in Peru builds for this project, and between the system integrators they arrange the profits of the margin to the U.S. system integrator. That's very flexible, and is probably, once you know a little bit more, you will see that each country will have its benefits to do it one way or the other, and also the type of relationship that you have with the system integrator will tell you how to do this. I've seen those two cases. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you on when you're partnering with a system integrator in another country. I think trust and relationships is the primary driver, and that takes time. When you're doing work for, say, a U.S. client that has an operation in another country, I think that's a little bit easier. Some things that we've done is we've requested payment from the United States in some cases. And where we can't get that, sometimes we've asked for someone in the U.S. headquarters to either guarantee payment by the foreign operation, or at the very least, sign saying, yeah, I'm authorizing this, I'm recommending this. So get some kind of buy-in from the U.S.-based contacts.
No.
If I can jump in there, one other component to keep an eye on is if we use the model that Vicente talked about, where the contract is held in the U.S. dollars by the U.S. integrator, and he's subbing out portions of it, then in larger projects you may find that you need to hedge some funds because of the currency exchange. So that's just another component to keep in mind.
Yes. And you will find that most of the large system integrators in Latin America, they will be quoting dollars. We, as a distributor, our webpage describes dollars, because the exchange rate, it varies every month. So nobody wants to bother with those ups and downs. Well, anyway, anybody else with a comment on this topic? I think this type of relationship on the financial side, the payment side is really important, and probably one of the things that the U.S. system integrators consider the most. Anybody else with the ideas?
Yeah, we have a follow-up question about hedging funds. Don, not everyone in the audience is familiar with that. Can you describe that?
Yes. So if you've got a lot of purchases that you're going to be doing locally, and they're going to be in the local currency, you may want to deal with a bank to get some funds in that currency that you've already agreed to what the exchange rate is. Particularly if you're dealing in a country that has fairly high inflation rates, and the currency is not tied to the U.S. dollar. So it's just something you need to keep an eye out on. Banks can help.
Yeah. Some comments here. Almost rarely, in my experience, I haven't seen the need or the obligation to quote in a local currency. In Mexico, probably Pemex sometimes force local system integrators to do that, but they don't do it with foreign system integrators or foreign companies. It varies with the department of Pemex. Pemex is a domestic oil company, a state-owned oil company in Mexico.
Yeah, Pemex was an example that I had some pretty first-hand experience with.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I'm sorry, I didn't know you were talking, Don. I heard some back noise on your end. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying that Pemex was the example that I could think of too.
Okay. And here's just another experience, personal experience with my business is, my main business is still in Mexico, but I did open a U.S. business, and I found out that sometimes it's easier and more practical, and with certain customers, it will be easier, and for me, it will be more, how can I say, I will be sure that I'm going to get paid on time if I deal with my U.S. company rather than with my Mexican company. And we're talking about differences right now. Most of the time, you will find that the end users do treat better a U.S. system integrator than a local system integrator. And that's shocking for some of the people that I'm talking to having these conversations. But for a local system integrator, it's easy to find terms like you finish the $80,000 project, and when everything is working, 30 days later, I'll pay you. And a lot of local system integrators, Latin American system integrators, they need to put up with that because that's what the customer is requesting. Some of them they negotiate and they try to change, but that end user will never say that to a U.S. system integrator. Those are just the way they are. So sometimes I find myself better doing business in Latin America with my U.S. company rather than with my Mexican company. Okay. Anybody else with any other comment before going to this next section? I think we're closing well the previous part of this presentation.
Okay. Now we're down to just a few minutes, Vicente, so we should move on. Okay.
Sounds good. Now, why Latin America and why this is important? Well, here are a slide in front of you. You're looking at the growth rate for Latin American countries. And quick comments, just to compare and having a common sense. We represent a lot of companies in Latin America, and they see, well, I have 15, 20 countries that I can go to. But the size of the country is not that big most of the times. And the economy is not that big. But the attractive of this economy in Latin America is the growth rate. And you see the growth rate. Now, from the size standpoint, we were talking about Brazil growing 4%. Is larger than the GDP is bigger than England, and Mexico GDP is we're getting close to Canada now. Chile, Argentina, Colombia, good countries, good growth, good country to do business with. They are smaller companies, but they are growing fast. So I think this is an area where U.S. system integrator can take a look at for long term. Most of the countries, right? There are some political stories in Argentina and Venezuela that we'll leave it for the next webinar if that's the case. If somebody wants to know more about Latin America. The GDP and some this is a little bit small, but this is two important sources of information: the IMF and the World Bank. I'm sorry, and those are the world ranked. Brazil is now the 6th largest economy. Mexico is getting to the 11th, 10th largest economy, and is growing. Okay, just wanted to have this information in front of you. Also, when you receive this information, you go to this link, and this is a lot of information: industrial production, GDP per capita. A lot of information on each of the Latin American countries. You will find it in this link. An example, something that a CSIA can do, and probably the networking and the local system integrators can do. This is just an example. Just let's say I found that several good system integrators in U.S. they do mining. They are experienced in mining. The silver production is important in Latin America, but it could be, this example could be automotive industry, or it could be oil, petrochemical industry, etc. You know, this type of information is easy for local system integrator to get, and it will give you a good information. The size of the companies, the local companies, most of these are domestic companies. The same thing, when you get this presentation, you click on the company, and it gets you all the information about this particular company. We, as LASO, we have a lot of this information as well. If somebody is interested, we can certainly share with you. I personally do this for the companies that I represent. Another big topic. I think we have a comment. I see the PPT something blinking. Let me know. John, if I need to do something there, but if not, I will continue. Corruption, and yes, corruption could be a problem in Latin America. Some countries are more than others. We know in Latin America, we have that issue, and can tell you that most of the system integrators that we work with, they don't like this. It's anybody else, we don't like that this is happening. We don't like when that happens. Certainly, the good system integrators that I'm talking about, they know how to deal, they know how to handle these issues and try not to get into these problems. And the reason that I'm putting this slide here is to tell you that certainly you will not get exposed to any of this. You will not get involved in any illegal activity down there. We don't do. We are a Mexican company, and we've been in business 11 years, and we've never done anything like this. We know how to handle when that happens. That's I'm sure most of the system integrators that they will be interested in the CSIA association, they will help you to avoid and to get involved into this. They know how to do this.
We have a question from the audience, Vicente.
Sure.
How do you define corruption? Is that kickbacks?
Oh man, this is a webinar. This is a topic for a single webinar. In many ways, forms and shapes. I mean, you get crazy comments with a customer that says, "Listen, PC, you're going to get this project. I will give you a bank account where you need to put 10% of the value of the project. Okay, make sure that happens." That's easy like that. They request sometimes 10% of $1 million project. That's as crazy as it could go. Sometimes it's, we call it under the wire. Sometimes it's the technical coach of this project. They will say, you know what, I will recommend your bid, and you will have more chances to win. But just for me to do that, you need to give me I don't know, $5,000. And I will say most of the cases on the government-owned companies in Latin America is familiars, family, or close friends, compadres. I'm sure you know that word. And they do that. They do that in a repetitive basis. Okay, they do that. It's not a one-time thing. It is a procedure. Every time I go and I tell a customer, mostly on the state-owned companies, and you find good people and the wrong people too. The good people and bad people everywhere. But when I go there and I tell them that we don't get involved into that, some people, they just give me the look like, you crazy? This is the way that we do business. We all do that here. It's normal. It's a standard procedure. Okay? But we know how to handle that. We know how to handle those comments. We know how to not get involved. We don't even know when we have a project that we know that it's going to happen. We know how to avoid even getting involved, exposed, or even know how it's done.
Now, when you say we, Vicente, who are you referring to?
The Lasso salespeople. They know exactly how to handle this.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and the system integrators that if you decided to go there, they will tell you in advance, you know, in this account, this type of things happen. We're going to go this way in order to avoid that.
Okay, so you're saying that's for having a relationship with a local integrator to sort of lead you or coach you through those issues is the thing.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons for having a local relationship.
Correct. And one of the benefits as a U.S. system integrator is they know most of the American companies will not want to get involved in that, so they will never tell you anything about that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the customer. From the customer standpoint, they will never address you with those topics. It's going to be that your local system integrator, your partner that is local, he will tell you in advance. Hey, you know, Bob, this is going to happen on this account. We're going to go in a different way in order to avoid that. And they tell you how and do that. And then it will happen. Eventually, you will get exposed. You will hear that from your local system integrator.
Okay. So the key takeaway for today is that you may have some exposure to that, but you can get help in learning how to deal with it.
Yes.
Okay.
And in many other ways, I can have many examples, but in general, it is important because it's a fear that people outside this region will have.
Okay.
And it's true. It happens, but there is a way to go around it.
Okay. Very good.
Next slide. Another example. This is just information. Probably PC Romano will add a little bit in here too. But in the beginning, when you want to go to Brazil or Mexico, they're big countries, and where to go. And how to go there. Well, there are two slides. This slide will tell you where most of the GDP is. You will see that near Sao Paulo is where you will find the big system integrators and the economy, where the economy moves in Brazil. And the next one tells you the economic activity and the type of industry. It's a little bit small right now, but there's a lot of information in a single image. When you get this presentation, you will be able to see this in detail. So if you are a system integrator that you have more expertise in the mining industry or in the automotive industry, you will see where that industry is. And again, all this information, I have the links for all of this information. If somebody is interested in this, please let me know. I'll happily share all that information with you. Again, I see a tremendous opportunity selling your expertise into the Latin American end users. I think it's a win-win scenario for everyone. Now, before we finish, what would be a next step? You say, well, you kind of sell me the idea here, or I think this is important, or probably we invite some Latin American system integrators with us today. If they want to add something at this point, that will be good. For the U.S. system integrators, I will say Bob could be a good person to contact. Myself, if I can help in some countries, but certainly Bob will have a lot of input for you. But certain next step is, this is just my idea. I'm sure we can go different ways, but my idea will be, if you already have a world-class company with the operations in different countries, and you have good relationship and you've been doing systems for that particular company, and you found that that company has facilities in Latin America, probably finding a system integrator local in that country where you have those facilities, and talking to him about the systems that you do, he will be very open. Most of the times, he will be very open to say, well, why don't we show your solutions to that end user in my country? Most of the times, again, that end user will take that information very well accepted, and then from them they can arrange a visit for you to go visit that country and expose and explain what you've done in the States, and you will be very well received. We've done that before many times, and it works. It works that way. Also, as a closing, for those systems, I describe what the local system integrator in Latin America will bring to the table, and also what the U.S. system integrator will bring to the table. The local system integrator, they do very well PLC programming, all the panel building. They can handle databases and drives, and technically very, very well. Just remember that the Latin America system integrators typically are companies from 15 to 20 years of experience. And I've seen system integrators in the US with, I don't know, 50, 60 years in business or more, with the expertise that really requires not only years in business, but also technical people doing projects over and over for several amounts of years. And that's what I think you have as an asset to bring to the table. PC or Bob, anything you want to add on this last slide?
No, I think this summarizes all the things that we've talked about quite well, what the local SI can bring and what the US SI brings, and how together they can provide solutions for end users, and most people, if not all, are open to the possibility. So I say, think outside your borders.
I think it's a good opportunity to grow for everyone. We, as a distributor, we were more than happy. I'm sure all the automation vendors will be happy to receive you in Latin America. I'm sure local system integrators will be very interested in talking to you, system integrators in the US, and certainly it's an easy way to expand business on your end as well.
Vicente, one of the points that we talked about in a prior conversation, and probably one of the regular monthly meetings, was the concept that, yeah, you have expertise, but what have you done in Brazil? And that's an area where the local integrator really brings a lot of value as well.
A couple of things Brazil is probably the only country in this region that they have a good expertise. I mean, good level of technical expertise as well. You will find that they are open to talk to U.S. system integrators, because even though they are very good on the power with a business company that very, very powerful and very has a lot of expertise on the power industry. But that's what they do, and they understand when they partner with a system integrator like probably PC Romano. They will say, PC has expertise on the process side, on the petrochemical industry. I have some customers that I can take PC Romano over there, share expertise, and work together on those type of accounts. That could be one. The second one is some of those system integrators in Brazil, talking Brazil, mostly Brazil, they have expertise in certain level of process that you can, mostly oil industry, they have a good level of technology, new technologies in Brazil for the oil industry that I'm sure oil industry in the U.S. will want to hear about that. And that level of partnership in Brazil is going to be different. I don't know if the question was related into that. I don't know if I answered the question or not. Let us know. And another good point, another example, and this is in Mexico. Several system integrators they will like to offer their services to, for example, assembling panel controls. We found that with a couple of large system integrators in Mexico, they have a relationship with the U.S. system integrator, and they build their panels 2 hours south of the border. They build the panels, and then they ship it. The engineering is made in the U.S. All the layout of the panels and everything is sent to, in English, is sent to this system integrator. This system integrator in Saltillo, he will, in Mexico, he will get the layout, and they will build the panel and ship the panel back. That for them is a good business. So a relationship can go many ways.
Yeah, Vicente, I think we need to wrap it up soon. PC, you had your hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was from before.
Okay.
Okay. PC, I don't know, before we finish, if you want to add anything at this point, I don't know if you, I know you have experience in the field.
I think you did a great job with an overview of all the issues. I think, it's important to recognize it's a big opportunity, but that there are also some unique challenges. So reach out to partners, other CSIA members, people on this panel for help. In my situation, people have bent over backwards to help.
Yeah. Bob, on your end, before we are making some time to wait for questions or comments from everyone. But Bob, did you want to add something in the meantime?
Well, I just would comment that yes, there are challenges, but I honestly believe from what I've learned over the last year, when there's been an increased focus on CSIA growing globally, particularly with our emphasis right now on Latin America, but eventually India and some other places as well, that, yeah, there are challenges, but there are just huge opportunities as well. And that I would encourage all of our members, regardless of where they are on the globe, to think outside their borders. We use the expression "think outside the box." Well, in this case, just think outside of where you are, and realize that there is good potential, and that everyone has talents to bring. You need to do it carefully, take into consideration any of the things we talked about today. But go for it. And CSA will do its best to be that that forum for networking and teaching is exactly what we do. Nearly everything every tool, every opportunity we provide is applicable no matter where you are on the globe. With a little tweak, locally, but generally speaking, 90-some% of the tools and opportunities we provide, particularly best practices, the conference, they're applicable everywhere, and our members should get to know one another.
Yeah.
Are there any additional questions?
Do we have any additional questions before we finish?
No, there are none at this point.
My probably last comment will be, I see this Latin American system integrators interested into this organization. To me, what I see from the system integrators along already into the CSIA is probably the group that should be leading, or they are leading. I will say they are leading. They don't know, but they are leading where the automation is going. I see tremendous expertise and engineering houses a tremendous power and what they do, that working as a team, it looks very good from a Mexican standpoint, from a Latin American standpoint. It looks very, very professional group of companies. And when I see the Latin American companies trying to join in, I also see the same thing. They want to be part of that group. So I will say most of those Latin American system integrators that are interested, they are talking to Bob, they are getting into your webpage, they are starting to go to your events in your annual meetings. I think they will be a perfect candidate to start looking for partnership and then do, as Bob says, thinking outside of the borders. I think CSIA is a very good networking association as well. I see it that way. I don't see anything better than that. It's companies trying to do exactly the same, trying to grow, try to help each other, and it doesn't matter where the country, where are you from. It's the same objective. And combining the skills and the needs for both sides of the border, I think everybody wins. I'm really excited about this opportunity of helping and doing this. And we probably need to wrap this up if there is no more questions.
Okay,
go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, obviously I'll just kind of bring it to a conclusion here, and I'd like to do so by saying thank you very much to Vicente. He put a huge amount of effort. Yes, the rest of us participated to a degree, but Vicente put the lion's share of effort into preparing the presentation, and we're really, really grateful for his help. And I'll thank him publicly for all the help he's provided me whenever I've gone for any reason to Mexico. He's always there in many different ways, whether it's transportation or arranging hotels, whatever, and just say thanks to him and his team for helping me in so many instances, so I appreciate it. I want to thank all of the attendees. We went kind of long today, but it seemed like the information was good and it was worth continuing with it. So thanks for sticking with us, those who did. I appreciate your participation, and hopefully you'll have some takeaways for doing business with integrators and end users outside of your country. Also thanks to PC and Don for your time today, your contribution of time and expertise. All three of you, your insights are appreciated. And thanks again to our host and sponsor, John Weber of Software Toolbox. He provides us with a very professional webinar opportunity. So thank you, John. Be sure to complete the survey for today's webinar. It'll arrive in your inbox any moment. It only takes a very short time to complete. It's just a couple of questions, and we really, really, really need your feedback so that we can make improvements. So in closing, here's a little bullet list for you to consider. CSIA, as of a week ago, has a brand new website, and the key difference, in addition to a different appearance, is that there is a client side. We're trying to provide information for system integrators' clients, and so we want to appeal to them as well as also system integrators. Best Practices Revision 4 is now out. It's in the library for our members to download, and I encourage all integrators to implement CSIA best practices. July newsletter comes out next week. There's lots of new and exciting information and announcements in there, so read your newsletter, spread it to everyone in your company that could possibly have interest in it, and keeps them informed. And finally, if you have a suggested topic for a webinar in the future, please include that idea or suggestion in your survey. So this is Bob Lowe, Executive Director of CSIA, and thanks again to everyone for attending, and goodbye.